BBC Home Service. Here is the news, and this is Alvar Adele reading it. Japan's long-threatened aggression in the Far East began tonight with air attacks on United States naval bases in the Pacific. Fresh reports are coming in every minute. The latest facts of the situation are these. Messages from Tokyo say that Japan has announced a formal declaration of war against both the United States and Britain. Japan's attacks on American naval bases in the Pacific were announced by President Roosevelt in a statement from the White House tonight. The first statement said that the naval base of Pearl Harbour and other naval and military targets in the chief Hawaiian island of Oahu had been attacked from the air. Almost immediately after came the announcement that Manila in the Philippines had also been raided. A little while ago, Mr. Stephen Early, White House Press Secretary, said that as far as was known at the moment, the attacks were still going on.
Oh, what awful news to go to bed with. Oh, what a lovely cup of tea that was. I really needed a break. We've been so busy in the food office today. I think it might have something to do with the weather outside. But all the talk today has been about those awful attacks yesterday. Every American base seems to have been surprised. If they were dealing with a straightforward enemy, war would be declared before any attack were made. But with these gangster nations, no one knows. I had the feeling that many people were very low today. I'm feeling very tired, and the news is certainly not cheering. But we must carry on. We've got to put on brave faces because Christmas is just around the corner. Now, for those old folks, and especially the youngsters, they're really looking forward to their Christmas parties with fun, food, frolics, and hopefully Father Christmas making an appearance. So in the food office today and for the rest of this evening, I'll be showing some party food that we can make despite the shortages that you might find in your pantry. Let's start with beef and tomato fingers. Now, I'm sure, ladies, you know there's been a lot of grumbling about the unequal distribution of the canned meats that our American chums have been sending us over through their Lend-Lease agreement with us. And the government have been very concerned about this, and that's why the point system, which has been in place now for just over a week, introduced on December the 1st, that has come into place to try and solve some of these issues. And of course it means that we have an allowance of 16 points for every 4 weeks. Now we can use that point allowance wherever we want. We don't have to be registered with a certain retailer, and we can choose on what items we use our points to purchase. Of course, we do still need to pay for the food in pounds, shillings and pences, but our 16 points allocation ensures that no one can have more than their fair share of this canned food coming from America. And today I'm going to be making a party recipe with some of the canned American meat, and I'm using corned beef today for this delicious party food. I've started off by measuring out, weighing 8 ounces of self-raising flour, ladies, not plain. So if you've only got plain in your pantry, then do remember to pop in some extra raising agent, perhaps 2 teaspoons of bicarb to 1 cream of tartar. Add that to your plain flour, but because I'm using self-raising, it's already got most of the raising agents in it. I'm just simply adding a teaspoon of baking powder to the self-raising flour, that's 8 ounces, and I'm also going to add a little pinch of salt. And I'm then going to sift these 3 ingredients together. Generally, my flour has got a bit lumpy in this damp weather, makes it a delicious pastry. Now to my flour, baking powder and salt, I'm adding 2 ounces of fat. Now you can get away with only using 1 ounce of fat, that's fine. But if you've got enough, obviously the extra ounce does mean it becomes a little richer. Now rub in the fat into your flour, and then when that's done, we're going to add some cold water to bind it all together so that it can be rolled out. Now, of course, each of these items on the points system at the moment are canned meat, are canned fish and canned vegetables. They're given a points value according to the demand and the availability of supply. So when the supply is low but the demand is high, the points value will be raised. When the demand is low and the supply is good, the points value will be lowered. And that's when, ladies, you really need to make the most of your points. Choose items not just because you fancy a bit of corned beef or a bit of spam, but because perhaps they're low in points value at that moment in time, and so you can make very good use of them. Now there's my fat rolled in. I'm going to add a little water, a couple of tablespoons at a time. We don't want to make it too wet, and I'm going to use my pastry blender, which I always find does an excellent job of binding pastry together. Just a tiny bit more. And that should do. And there we are. Now don't leave your pastry to rest like we would normally do with our short crust pastry. We're going to start rolling this out immediately to get it in the oven as soon as possible. So on a floured board, roll your pastry out quite thinly. Into an oblong. Like so. And now we're going to cut that in half. Oops. Now for the filling. I'm using 8 ounces of corned beef. Take it out of the tin, put it in a warmer place just so that it's a bit easier to mash up, and we're going to mash this with 2 to 3 tablespoons of either tomato catsup, or you could use 2 skinned and chopped fresh tomatoes. Now I'm going to use some catsup for this. Pop it in. Measure it out. 1, 2. Oh, and that seems to be the last of the bottle. Have to go to Mr. Smith's for a little more. Now mash the corned beef into the catsup or your chopped tomatoes, and then we're going to spread it out over half of the pastry that you've rolled out. Now let's spread that on. Filling the pastry. Now spread that out over that half a pastry. Damp the edges. And then place the other half on top. Press to seal. And then we're going to just pop that into a moderate oven for about 25 minutes. So onto the tray it goes, and we'll pop that in for a while. Now after 25 minutes or so, it will be browned and firm. Pop it onto a cooling rack until cold. Now once that's cooling, I'm going to catch up on that latest news. Now when it's cold, cut it into finger slices. Now you could always eat this warm, but they really are delicious when they're cut into little fingers and served at a tea party.